Hey guys, welcome. Another episode of Hanson's Coaching Services Training Talks. Today we're going to talk about the tempo run for the marathon. We're going to talk about the Hanson definition of a tempo run because I know how we describe it is different than what you may be used to if you read other coaches' works. So we'll go over that. We're going to go where the tempo run fits into the marathon. As far as overall training, why it's important, the benefits of it, physiological, mental, those types of things. So let's get right into it. Okay, so the tempo run for us, it's simply a run at goal race pace. I know when I was reading through some of Dr. Joe Vigil stuff, I mean, he specifically has tempo runs is one thing, and marathon race pace is another thing. Just be aware what we're talking about is marathon race pace, and to us that is the tempo run. So for example, a 6-mile tempo equals 6 miles at marathon goal pace plus a warm-up and cool down. So a lot of times when people look at the basic schedule, they see like tempo 6 and they just assume that it's 6 miles total. It's 6 miles plus the warm up and cool down, so your total is going to be quite a bit more than that. If you do a 1.5 mile warm up, 1.5 mile cool down, you're looking at 3 miles. Higher mileage people will run 3 miles for a warm up and 3 miles for a cool down. So you can see where mileage begins to add up quick, and when people have issues with the program, a lot of times this is it, because of that extra mileage. It definitely makes this a much more significant workout as far as time goes, as well as difficulty. So just keep that in mind, and that's why the program really differs from a lot of other kind of programs for the masses, because you really are doing a much more significant tempo run during the week than what I've seen for most programs. And as you can see, if you're looking at the PowerPoint along with this, it's a significant run. That's all there is to it. It's definitely as far as intensity, and it's definitely as far as if you get further into the schedule where you're doing an 8, 9, 10-mile tempo. Just seeing if there's anything else I had in my notes for this. Late in the training segment, when we talk about this being a significant run, if you're doing a 10-mile tempo plus a warm-up and cool-down, you're talking about anything from 13 to 16 miles during the week, and it really almost adds a second long run to the program. But the nice thing is you're spending a lot of time at marathon pace, and that's the best way to learn your pace is by spending time at that goal pace. Tempos are really, really important, and they're also left out in any significant portion in some programs. And the Hanson philosophy is definitely based on Arthur Lydiard principles, and as you can see here, this is kind of a pyramid of how Lydiard does his training. So now, keep in mind here, what you're looking at is this is really for a 5K guy, a person running a mile or 1,500, or even like with Peter Snell running the 800 back in the day in New Zealand. So you can see even for these speed runners, they spend a lot of time doing low-intensity aerobic, your easy days, what he calls a sub-threshold or marathon pace running is a very significant portion of the overall aerobic pyramid of training, and this is where they develop their strength and their ability to run fast later on. And so for us, with the marathoners, the Lydiard sub-threshold, in our case, the marathon pace tempo running, is a huge portion of what's going on, and this is why we do it once a week, because it is a significant overall development tool, whether you're running a marathon or not. And now that you are running a marathon, it makes it even much more important for your overall development. And that's not even speaking just from a standpoint of learning pace or anything like that. That's just a long-term development aspect that can't be avoided. And yes, when you look at other training guidelines, it's not in an easy or a moderate range. It's not in a specified zone for lactate threshold. It's really in a gray area of training, which definitely goes to show you that you really cover all aspects of training, not just speed or lactate threshold or anything like that. Hitting those gray areas are good, and for marathon running, that's you're in a gray area. You're not at your lactate threshold and you're not at your aerobic threshold. You're somewhere in the middle, so you need to be aware of how it feels to be in that area. Just some notes that I have. Excuse me. What are the benefits? Some of the things here. So learning the pace. That's obvious. I mean, and since like I just said, you're in a gray area, you're not going to feel like that a lot. You're not going to feel that uncomfortableness. You're not going to feel that uncomfortable as far as like if you're running a 5K and you're at your red line, and you're not going to feel like you're running a half marathon threshold run or something like that. It's definitely going to feel not overly hard, but it's not going to feel that great either. Another thing is learning patience, and this is so important for the marathon. It's going to be, for some people, it's really hard to run the shorter tempos because it's really, really easy for them, and so they really want to push the pace. And so learning the patience is vital for marathon success. Being able to be patient in workouts is going to be able to translate into being patient during the race. Overall fitness will increase substantially. We discussed that already. I think the tempo runs are a huge confidence boost, especially when you do the 8, 9, 10-mile tempo runs. To me, that's much more significant than being able to run a 20-miler at 2 minutes or more slower than you want to run for the marathon. To me, that just tells me I can go the distance. And if that's your goal, then that's good. But if you want to run that marathon at a certain pace, being able to do so for an hour plus is a much more significant confidence booster. Fuel practice. It's a great way to practice what you're going to do on race day with gels or those beans or fluids, whatever the case is. The long tempo runs are the perfect opportunity to practice what you're going to do in the marathon. It's going to be able to tell you a lot of things too, actually. It's going to be able to tell you, because I think about gels and drinks that I take during easy runs or long runs, and I can tolerate them fine, but as soon as the intensity picks up, those things sometimes don't sit the same way, and they might cause discomfort. So you really learn what's going to work and what's not. I also do these outside of the marathon training, and I think it's a good way for a good aerobic stimulus. And like we talked about before, I mean, just looking at that pyramid, marathon pace running is a significant part of overall development. The last note I have here is with slow twitch fibers, and part of what the marathon is dealing with that fatigue of your slow twitch muscle fibers. And if you don't have anything to connect to, as far as intermediate fibers or fast twitch fibers, then once those slow twitch fibers are fatigued, like they will be late into the marathon, then you really lose efficiency, and you're going to have to slow down because you have nothing to really keep driving that force of muscle contraction. The tempo runs are a great way to practice that, where you'll be able to run at that intensity for a long time, fatigue those muscles, and trigger developments that will allow more neuromuscular adaptation so that you can develop those connections to those other muscle fibers. So when you get to mile 22, mile 23, something like that, and those slow twitch fibers they're just shot. They've had it. They've been doing work for a few hours now. Even though they're not producing the force that they were, they can rely on your other muscle fibers to keep you going and get you through the rest of the marathon. Okay, so physiological benefits, we've touched upon this a little bit. Um, what we're looking at is a chart here. Um, the line that is straight goes up linearly with the exercise is the heart rate, and the curved line is your lactate concentration. So we know the harder we exercise, the higher lactate levels are going to be, um, and we can learn a lot of things from this. So marathon pace is technically an easy aerobic pace, although the faster you are, the harder it is to run and feel comfortable at marathon pace, which is why we do tempo runs. But we do get but it is a run that's less than your lactate threshold. So you're getting all of those benefits that accompany easy run benefits, things like increased mitochondria density, enzyme activity, neural development. Most of those things we already talked about. What it means for us is that you can deal with lactic acid a lot more efficiently because you're not creating as much, because you're able to use more fat at a higher intensity because of the mitochondria. One of the things why we switch to carbohydrate as we run faster is because fat is too slow to break down and provide the energy. So if we have more mitochondria, bigger mitochondria, enzymes inside the mitochondria that's going to help break down, now all of a sudden you can break down fat because you're able to break down more of it at once, and you'll be able to supply yourself a lot more efficiently than you were able to before. So that kind of pushes all of those lines to the right, and it means you can run faster, burn fat at a higher level, and not be at your lactate threshold. Um, and this is something I pulled right from Lydiard's writings. Um, and he's speaking specifically about marathon pace running. These can give nearly all the benefits of threshold training, which is faster. And this is where you see tempo runs traditionally defined as, and threshold meaning like at lactate threshold or slightly above, but without the danger of going over the edge like the threshold. And that's the problem with the threshold runs. You're running at a high level, you're producing a lot of lactic acid, and you can go over the edge. You can get burnt out really, really quick. And think about things we've said before where we tell you build from the bottom up. And this is basically what he's saying. He's saying push those thresholds up by working underneath them and pushing them up, not from trying to pull them up from the top. You can do a lot more volume this way and get a lot more benefit from it. So the main point here is that by doing this, you're going to not only be able to run faster, but you're also going to be able to conserve fuel, and you're also going to improve your thresholds full. So when you are done with marathon training, you can run a faster 5K, you can run a faster 10K, run a faster half marathon because those thresholds are to the right, meaning you can run faster at the same amount of effort, and that's kind of the goal of training, right? Be able to run faster and longer, and not hit the wall. Okay, mental benefits. There are definitely mental benefits to the tempo run. I've touched upon this a little bit with the confidence, but to me the big thing is that you know how the paces feel. You know how it's going to feel when it's warm, when it's cold, on different types of terrain, and that's probably one of the biggest things a runner can do is learn how a pace feels without relying on other things like a GPS or the clock itself. Um, Learning and knowing your body and what your body's doing is vital to long-term success, and training at that pace helps you learn that pace. The variety of conditions we just talked about, and lastly, just being able to run a long time at that pace for every single week, especially those last 6-8 weeks where you're doing 8, 9, 10-mile tempo runs. Um, like I said, that's just a huge confidence booster. Once those 10-mile tempo runs become fairly comfortable, I would be very, very confident knowing that you can run that pace for the full marathon. How to build into the marathon pace. Um, I've had a few clients over the years that have just simply struggled with tempo runs, running 4, 5, 6 to 10 miles at marathon pace. They just can't seem to hit it for one reason or the other. Um, and it's tough. And it's as a coach, you need to find a way to teach these people how to be able to do that. And sometimes people have gone after big big goals as far as maybe a big jump in training or big jump in a race goal, like saying that maybe they want to go from 3.5 hours to a sub 3 hour marathon in 6 months. So that's a significant drop in pace. That's a huge amount of training that's going to have to take place to do that. So that marathon pace might seem pretty fast, and it might be very daunting for them to try to hit that on a regular tempo run. So one thing that we can try is the marathon style fartlek. Traditionally, we in the elite program have done this as part of a long run, but it's definitely something that you can do as a regular tempo run. I would do these hopefully before your traditional marathon training segment starts, something that maybe before you start the marathon program itself. So maybe if you're going to do a fall marathon, start doing these marathon style fartleks in the spring. But basically, I was listening to Jay Johnson speak, and he does these a lot with threshold style tempo runs, or the faster tempos. But I definitely think you can do the same thing with a marathon. And how he does it, here's his progression that he does. He does 2 minutes on, 3 minutes off 1 week. Next week, 3 minutes on, 2 minutes off the following week. Week 3, 4 minutes on, 1 minute off, followed by a 7 minutes on, 3 minutes off, 8 minutes, and then 8 minutes on, 2 minutes off. So what I mean by that is 2 minutes at pace, 3 minutes easy, and then each week increasing the amount of time that you're running at pace and really decreasing the ratio of rest to how much you're running at pace. But I think it's a good way because it really breaks up the tempo run and you progressively learn how that pace feels over a little bit longer each week. And then I would say once you got to that point, and then once you get to that point, you could do a 2 mile tempo, a 3 mile tempo, and then 4 mile tempo without stopping, and then you're really good to go with the other tempo runs, and that would be the goal. So if you count this up, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then the 8th week you'd kind of build into that traditional 4 mile tempo, 5 mile tempo. So you can see if you start 2 months before and you kind of really gradually build into it, by the time you get to where you're actually starting that training, it's something you could probably handle much, much better. The key here is the rest. So let's take, for instance, that first week where you're doing 2 minutes on, 3 minutes off. The rest is not slow. It might be 10 to 30 seconds slower than marathon pace. So, and that's what the key is here, because you're not slowing down enough. So there's a huge difference between your fast part and your slow part, and over time you're just going to be able to feel like running at marathon pace the whole time. And that's kind of the key to this, right? We want to build you from running short intervals at your pace to long blocks of time at your pace, and this is really going to help because that rest is going to be there initially, but it's not going to be so much that there's a drastic change in the pace, but it's enough to break it up for you. So I would be curious to see how people handle these things over time. On the second one, what if I have to slow down for my marathon pace? So let's say you're looking to break 4 hours, and you go out on your easy day and you run 4 miles at a time, and it's faster than 4 hour pace. I definitely see that a lot, but here's why when I see it when people run really low mileage and they're just fresh all the time. Um, and I also see it when they're unsure of what they're capable of. So honestly, a lot of times these things work out. As mileage increases, their easy runs will slow down because they're not as fresh. They're a little bit more fatigued going into their everyday run, and then everything kind of balances out. Um, and then when they're unsure of what they're capable of, I try to get them just to run a race, and we can really nail down what they really want to do. So the slowing down part really ends up working itself out, and I don't see a lot of issues with that long term. It ends up really just taking care of itself more. Um, if somebody is running low mileage and they have a hard time being convinced to run more mileage, that's where I would struggle because to me, you can't handle mileage because of things like that, running too hard every day and not allowing yourself to recover, not allowing bone tissue to build up, tendon tissue to build up, things like that to be able to handle more mileage. It's not necessarily the mileage itself that's causing the injury. It's potentially other issues. So then I mean, and if that's the case, then I would really have to sit down with you and say, hey, listen, let's try to take our time and build this up. Okay, so just to recap here, tempo runs are vital to any marathon program. They're really vital to training in general, but obviously when you're training for a marathon, they become more important. Other training segments, they can definitely be spaced out much more. Um, Learning your pace is a must. So race day pace is key, especially if it's something that's going to be a significant change to you. I really feel that learning that pace early and learning that pace over the course of time, really nailing it down is huge. And to me, that can calm a lot of fear going into race day, knowing that it does feel comfortable for a significant amount of time. It just boosts that confidence, and it really helps you dial in right away, because the biggest thing you can do to mess up your race is go out too hard. And if you really know how that feels, you have a lot less chance of doing that, because you're going to know if you're going too hard. And lastly, while it's in a gray area of training, as far as it's not technically an easy, but it's not technically, a threshold run, things like that, the benefits carry over to all your running. So increased fat utilization, increased aerobic foundation, improved neuromuscular function. And all three of those things are key for endurance running, whether it's a half marathon or marathon. And later on, when you go back to 5Ks and 10Ks, I think you'll be surprised at how much better you're going to be able to run because of these huge improvements in your aerobic capabilities. So the tempo run is important. Trying to fit it in is key. And I know that during a marathon training segment, asking somebody to do 8, 9, 10-mile tempo run during the week can be tough. So just know that it is a little bit of a sacrifice now, but on race day you're going to be glad you did it. We do talk about things in our members only section, how to maybe adjust these, maybe how to move them to a weekend so that you can incorporate a longer tempo run if you simply don't have time during the week. So you definitely can vary some things, but I can't stress enough the importance of the tempo run, especially the marathon pace tempo run. So that's it for today. Any questions, please contact us through the site, hansonscoachingservices.com. And we do consults. We offer up a lot of things. Our members only section is getting going now. We're adding more and more to that over the course of now, over 2 months. Hopefully we'll have most of that stuff up there, but focusing on the marathon first to get you guys straightened away, because that's what most of our clients are doing, is the marathon. So new info up there all the time. I actually just posted something there today. So sorry for rambling. I will talk to you later. Thanks for listening.